Welcome to the Zelos podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. This week, we've got Mauro Castillo in the house. He's strengthened performance within the Texas Rangers organization. But before we get underway, check out my website, rockysnyder.com. If you need continuing education, if you're a chiropractor, athletic trainer, physical therapist, strength coach, doesn't matter. Plus blogs and a whole bunch more, rockysnyder.com. And I just got back from the Chicago Perform Better Training Summit. It's going to be happening again in July. That's going to be in Long Beach, and then August in Providence, Rhode Island, where I'll be presenting there, so hope to see you. And if you can make it to the NSCA National Conference in Kansas City, Missouri, this July 16th to the 19th, I'm sure to see you there as well. Meanwhile, if you want some continuing education in the form of a master's program, go to setantacollege.com and then enter the code RS10 for 10% off tuition today. They've got master's programs in a whole bunch of different fields. In the meantime, follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. Click the subscribe button and enjoy the show. Well, Mauro, I can't thank you enough for coming on here. I mean, you've got some unique credentials, which we're going to dig into in just a moment. But I mean, you're in the middle of your season right now, so to take a little time out is really quite impressive to me. So first of all, I'm very grateful to have you on, and thank you for being on the Zelos podcast.
It is my honor. Thank you for having me.
So let's just, usually I love kicking off with what we call the superhero origin story, but your origins are in some ways unique. Did you grow up in the Dominican Republic?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Dominican Republic, a little town called La Romana. It's a small town, population probably like, I don't know, 70,000, 100,000, maybe.
Where
That's
is it
where
in reference to, like in relation to Cabarete?
Cabarete. So Cabarete is north. La Romana is east, probably like 2 hours from Punta Cana,
Okay.
which I'm pretty sure most people that know about Dominican Republic have heard about it because of Punta Cana. So yeah, we're like about 2 hours from it.
Thank you.
So
Now
yeah,
I got a visual. Great.
yeah, that's where I did all my formal education, high school. Um, then I got accepted in medical school in Technological Institute of Santo Domingo. That's the capital, Santo Domingo. So I was in med school for 7, 8 years or so. Got my degree, and at that point, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my career. I didn't know. I was 100% sure that I didn't want to go into residency just because, I have a thing with how things are run in that world with it a lot of anarchy and dictatorship and really low wages. So a lot of things that didn't really strike well with me.
Really?
So yeah, it's not a good look. I think as a country, there's a lot of room for improvement in that department. I think anybody could tell you that. So that led me to sports. So at that time, I was working out in a local CrossFit gym, and one thing led to another. I ended up becoming a coach, and then a couple of years later, I ended up becoming an owner of that same gym. So I ran the gym with two other partners for 2 years, and we're now in 2022. I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore, so I head out in a different direction in another city. Ended up in Santiago, which is 2 hours south of Cabarete, just for reference. And my stay there was short. Spent there about 7, 8 months, and that's when I decided that what I wanted to do with my career, my country at that time simply wasn't able to, give it to me. So that's when I looked overseas and I applied for the Cressey Sports Performance Internship in Florida, which we've all heard. And
Eric's a great guy. I've had him on the excuse me, the
yeah,
podcast
yeah,
also.
I've
Hmm.
heard that episode too.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so literally had to sell everything I had to get there. So, you name it, shoes, my vehicle, sofa, barbecue, everything I had to sell it just for a month's worth of rent. And I just, put all my eggs in that basket, and it paid off during that time. This is 2023. Uh, 3 months, and I got a job with the Rangers, met my now wife, and that time just changed my life forever. And everything has been a blur since then.
Dude, that's amazing.
I know.
Like, it's just like things have a way of falling in your lap. But of course, there's hard work and opening
Mhm.
doors of opportunity. I mean, it just doesn't it just fall from the sky necessarily. But I think that's phenomenal.
I know.
And it just yeah. So, how long have you been married now?
Uh, 2 weeks today.
No way! You just got married a couple weeks
Yeah,
ago. Oh,
yeah,
throw that in the mix. Wow, that is phenomenal.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, so here's one of the questions that I have in regards to your medical background and that you're strength conditioning specialist with the Texas Rangers organization. Is there a way that you blend, like how would I say it? So these combination of credentials as medical doctor and S&C coach and scientist, like how do you integrate the clinical knowledge with performance training in the environment with baseball? Or do you? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. And I think there are multiple layers to this. I think at first, um, one of the lessons I learned when I was first hired with the Rangers is that yes, I do have a somewhat unique background, and yes, like I'm able to take advantage of all that, but at the same time, I think strictly speaking, my knowledge base leans a little bit more towards the athletic training world. But one, I'm not an athletic trainer. Um, Two, we have a fantastic athletic training too. So I think a lesson that I learned was how do I stay in my lane? As a strength and conditioning coach, our limitations are, present. There's things I have or should say or do that I don't know how to say it, but just keep in my lane and try not to be the that guy, like here's comes the doctor coach with his opinion. So I think that was something that I had to learn, how to coexist with the fact that I'm not the guy that calls the shot in that regard. But addressing the question specifically, um, yeah, there's certainly a blend. I think, from my perspective, a lot of the things that helps into my work is how do I apply all the knowledge that I have with the players in terms of, um, for example, if you look at the evolution of strength and conditioning, you can see that throughout the years, the model has shifted away from reactive injury treatment model to a more like proactive and data-driven and scientist model,
Mm.
where clinicians have more to say in terms of what to do with the player. So I feel like having that as a background has allowed me to blur the lines of, medical assessment, rehabilitation, and performance enhancement. So having that background, um, allows me to be in multiple rooms at the same time, and simple being able to have that conversation with other departments in terms of what's best for what guy. Um, so I think that's the way that I've been able to do it this far. Not sure if that's how it's going to be in the future, but I think
Yeah,
that's
I
how
can
I like
see
to see
that.
it.
I mean, what I was sensing or imagining was your deeper level of communication amongst the medical and, as for that matter, the training staff. I mean, you can talk at certain levels with, of course, the team doctor, the athletic trainer, the physical therapist, and and I guess just get a deeper, more comprehensive kind of strategy because the level of knowledge and experience that you bring, and because traditionally strength conditioning coaches do not come with a medical degree, you know?
Yeah. And the other way around too. Usually, medical doctors do not go into strength and conditioning coaching. So it's a little bit of both.
Right. Okay, so when you're working with the Rangers here, how is it you're approaching the long seasons, whether it's in the majors, 162, or the minors? I can never remember that number. How many games are in a minor league season?
So it depends on the specific league that you are, but usually ranges from 130 to 144, something like that.
All right, so how how do you work or how do you approach things in terms of injury mitigation, reducing the risk of injury while at the same time trying to maintain peak performance?
Yeah. So, right, baseball season is long, right?
Yeah,
I don't think that's a secret. For example, for MLB, you have 162 games. You're playing from April, late September. And if you make it to the playoffs, you're playing all the way through November, right? So we're
yeah,
talking 6 to 8 months, 6 to 8 months of full season. Minor leagues, we play April through first week of September. If we make it to the playoffs, then we're talking close to October. October. So again, 5 to 6 months worth of season, and that's not even accounting on spring training, right? Uh, so we have
or the
guys,
DR league. I mean, any of the other leagues, because we're talking
right?
really year-round training with maybe a 4-week respite at best.
Correct. So we're looking at 9 month average full season. So it's a lot. Um, so I think one of the things that we rely on the most is a very thorough preseason screening. I think we take a lot of pride on that. That pre-screening allows to see and understand where the guys are at that point, right? That's something we do during spring training, as every other team also does. Also, having a clear communication with the players during the off season, it allows you to gauge where everyone is at as well. Um, Obviously, having a sound biomechanical and proficiency and skill technique, I think that's something that also allows to kind of bucket the guys that should be paying more attention than the others. I think that's also key. We can argue, what exercise is better to, increase RSI or increase peak power or rotational power. But if we're not um, doubling down on biomechanically sound movement, I think that's when we should stop the conversation. And as an organization, we take a lot of pride on that as well. Something that I think is not mentioned as often is how we can develop a culture where we foster and welcome early signs of fatigue with the players. Usually when someone comes to you, when a player comes to you saying like, my elbow hurts or been feeling this in my shoulder, it's been 2 weeks since he started feeling that way. So we just lost 2 weeks of, involvement just because the player didn't have the trust or didn't have the confidence to come to us with it. So I feel like fostering that environment, that safe environment where the player feels like they can talk with the staff about how he feels, I feel like that's huge, and I don't think that's being talked enough. And I'll give you an example. This is conversation that happened a couple of weeks ago, not even with our players in our team. So he came to me, I was in the weight room, said, "Hey, I've been feeling this in my wrist." He was a position player. Been feeling this on my wrist for the last 2 weeks. I've been off the roster. For some reason, the team is not letting me play. I can hit, I can run. I have a little bit of swelling at the end of practice, but I feel like I can do everything. What do you think? Like, what do you think it's happening? Tricky position for me. Like, I'm not even in your team, dude. So I was like, well, first of all, you need to know that the team as a whole and we as a staff, our overarching um, goal is to have you guys safe, right? You need to understand that even if you can play today, and even if you can play tomorrow, what we're looking at is the long-term window where if you do play today, the chances of you worsening your injury, getting into surgery, maybe losing a couple degrees of, radial deviation, pronation, supination, which is so crucial for a hitter, then there's your career. So what would you rather do? Miss a couple games, miss a couple days, or potentially, you know, uh, hinder your career? So he was like, I guess I didn't see it that way. I'm like, of course you didn't see it that way. But having that buy-in from the players, so them understanding like, hey, no, this is okay, and I understand why you're feeling this way, but this is why we do it. Trying to explain the big picture and letting them know that this is a safe space. So as long as you trust me, I'm going to trust you. I feel like we don't talk about it enough because it's hard. It's hard to establish that communication, that bond with the player, especially in baseball where language is a thing, right? It's a barrier. Like it probably wouldn't happen in the NBA, WNBA, NFL, NHL, like you name it, right? Where English is the most dominant language. So you don't have a problem if your native language is English, but all of a sudden we have Spanish here. Like right now, probably at this level, you have 50% of your roster, which is from Latin America. Like if you don't have that sense, that feel with the language, there's a lot that you're leaving on the table. And it's not your fault, right? But it's something to take into account. So fostering that communication, that channel, I think is also huge for injury prevention and mitigation. When it comes to sport performance or enhancement, we rely a lot on microdosing. Microdosing training, I think that's something that has been popularized the last couple of years, but it's been around since forever, especially coming from Europe. Um, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with it, but for people that are
Yeah,
listening,
please do.
what we do with microdosing, like think about all the training variables, right? Like volume, intensity, rest, frequency, tempo, training load, etc. So microdosing is basically it's like a high frequency model where the main goal is to dissipate the volume and intensity throughout the week. So as long as we keep the volume and intensity the same across the week, what the research is showing that working out shorter sessions each day seems to be render the same benefits. And personally, I'm a huge fan of the method, especially when we're talking a long season as baseball is. So we're playing 6 days a week, sometimes 7 games during that 6 days because we have to play doubleheader. I don't think there's any other major sport where you play a doubleheader, which is to me unreal. So having that 6 days, we work out 6 days a week, 20-25 minutes. And the overarching periodization model that we use is we do vertical integration, a little bit of DUP too. So that allows us to have more contacts with the player. And that's something that we also use as sort of like an injury mitigation thing. So think about it this way. When you see the player across the week only 2 to 3 times, there's a lot that you're not seeing. There's a lot that you're not hearing. All of a sudden, you're seeing him on a daily basis and you have more feel with the player. You're seeing stuff that they're not telling you. And you're hearing stuff that you're not seeing. So being able to have more contact with the player simply allows you to do more modifications and be more on top with the volume and intensity across the whole season. So I think it's a phenomenal way to keep performance at its peak while not taking away absolutely anything from the skill component of the sport.
Oh, no, that makes sense. to backtrack a little bit, you're mentioning your pre-screening. And I'm curious about the process. Like, what is involved with your pre-screening? And also, how much does it vary between organizations, team organizations, like Rangers versus the Diamondbacks or the A's or the Yankees and so on? I'm not sure if you're privy to that, but or is it fairly standardized all the way across?
I wouldn't know. Um, but if there's a team that's doing more than us, then I'm pretty sure they're in a pretty good spot. Um,
Ah,
so we do videos, right? Um, we do the functional assessment. We take thoracic rotation, dorsiflexion, hip rotation. We put it on the table. We take the gonometer. We measure all, elbow flexion and extension. Um, uh, Thoracic range of movement as well. Um, what else we do? We put them on the Proteus. We put them on the force decks. Um, grip strength, body fat, height, body weight, and once speed training hits, we put them in the DEXA scan for a more specific body fat percentage. So I think with all that into account, taking the injury history in the mix, it's just a crystal clear picture of where the guy is at that point.
so when it comes, yeah, you mentioned injury history because that was just bringing something up to the surface of my mind. I, Typically for me, I definitely want to know a person's injury history as complete as possible because I make a generalized assumption that all of those injuries have not been fully rehabilitated, that there is some compensatory action, some kind of navigating around the issue. Just kind of keep that in my field of vision, so to speak, when I'm watching somebody move and giving me a better understanding. Do you do that too?
Oh, of course. And if I could throw something else in the mix, I would say a walking assessment will be fantastic, but it's also not realistic. But
And why is that? Just because there's so much, it's such a huge gross movement that you are not going to pick it all up?
no, it's just because logistically, I mean, we're talking, close to 200 players. It's a lot, and it's also so. Here's the thing: as a professional, we take a lot of pride in the stuff that we do, right? And the data that we input into our smart innovation. It's always about the more you know, the better. And it up to a point, it's true. Like you do want to have a lot of data points on your players, right?
Sure.
What's the point of having all that data if you don't have a bridge into an application process, right? Like,
Right.
what's the point?
Yeah.
So tell me what you can do with the data, and then we reverse engineer from that. So what are we trying to achieve with the data that we have? And so we backtrack it to, okay, then we need this data, this data, this data, this data. That's not the case in a lot of times. Like you could probably have 20 data points and you're using 3 or 4 across the season. Just because what we use in the hub, in the HQ, where we have all of this equipment, is one thing. When you go to an affiliate where you have 30% of that equipment, what are you going to do? What is that data worth? So I feel like, yeah, it's fun. It's like, it's beneficial to have all those data points, but at the same time, is it realistic? Is it practical? Does it make sense logistically? So I think it's one of the challenges that we have in baseball that we probably don't have in other major sports like NFL or NHL or NBA, WNBA. You go from college straight to the pro league. That's not the case in baseball. There's a lot of walking up to it, and those lower levels are you gotta get creative in terms of the equipment that you do have. So it's not always about how much data you can gather, but how much efficient you can have with the little data that you do have.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, because you don't want to have paralysis through analysis and be drowning in data and be just going, what do I do with all this?
Right.
You quiet the noise in any way you can. Yeah, I completely get that. You mentioned you do a lot of assessments on the table, screening joint motions with a goniometer or however you might do it. You mentioned torso rotation, dorsiflexion, and so on. These are great, almost like SFMA, individual joint actions, and of course the mindset is typically, well, if I get an understanding in an open chain, then I have a pretty good understanding how it's going to behave in the closed chain. But do you do any kind of closed chain screening as well? I imagine you must. I mean, every movement can be a screen. It's not like that. I'm not trying to say that, but do you have some go-to closed chain actions that you like to look at with your players, whether it's in the weight room or outside of that or on the field?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we do. I mentioned a video assessment. So a video assessment, we have a player facing a with a black screen or white screen in the back. So we do squat, just a body weight squat with arms up, so like an overhead squat. We do a toe touch, and we do lunges. So not lunges, but split squat. So we do split squat,
Hmm.
and we do thoracic rotation too. So I think that combination of movement just paints a clear picture where the if the player is shifting, if he can is compensating on one side more than the other. What are the ankles doing when we're doing a squat? What are the torso doing when we're doing the overhead? What the hips doing when we're doing the toe touch? Is the knee collapsing on the split squat? If he opening the hips when he's going down into the split squat. So I think like having those movements, it's key. I mean, you don't even have to do anything else. If you see the player doing those four movements, you already know how she's going to behave with a barbell or a goblet or dumbbell on his hands.
Got it. Okay, let's go to that scenario with your player with wrist inflammation and some type of symptomology that's going on there. What's your I want to say a logical process. So what's your thought process when now of course, as a medical doctor, you have the ability to diagnose, but you're in the States, so I'm sure there's like a licensing thing between Dominican Republic and other countries and
Yeah.
so on. But with your background and your combined knowledge, strength conditioning, take me through a little bit of what your mind is thinking. If you were to, and you had the ability or authority to kind of suss out the issue, where does your mind go?
Usually, why it happened. Um, I think that's usually where my mind goes. It's very
Beautiful.
easy to look at the well, my knee is swollen, right? Like, okay, well, let's get lost in the knee. I think that's usually the approach. Uh, but I'll look at it, and then I will, right? That's definitely a symptom. That's the smoke and the gun, right? Now let's zoom out because the knee just doesn't happen to get swollen on its own. Like something has been going on,
I
unless
am
it's been
loving you right now. Excellent. Keep
unless
going.
unless it's been like a direct acute traumatic event on the knee is not the problem. So let's look at your ankles, right? Let's look at your feet. Let's look at your hips. Let's look at your tibia. And then let's look at your history. So I'll give you the story. We have this player that got drafted, I think it was 2023. Um, got surgery on his right knee, I believe. Meniscectomy, both sides, medial, lateral, off meniscus. Drafted, terrific player, super talented, a beast. Now he can run, he can hit, he can throw. He's on able currently to go through a full day of practice just because his knee is so swollen, right? Now, right, had surgery in his knee. Now you look at his pelvis completely down forward. So his entire center of mass completely shift forward. Zero ankle dorsiflexion. Tibia internal rotation, very limited. So you look at that, even his lumbopelvic control is very, very poor, which is something that I look at in the kinetic chain. Where is your lumbopelvic control? So you look at all those things and you see, well, obviously the knee was about to blow up. So the knee is not the problem. So it's just one of the examples that tells you that usually the thing that hurts is not the problem, but it's the entire component, because we have been used to looking at the body as a compartmental thing. It's the elbow, it's the shoulder, it's it's the hips. But I'll look at the body and I see one thing. It's just one system. It's just one close thing that works together. So that's where my mind usually goes. Okay, your ankle hurts, but let's look at all of the other stuff that has been going on that could have lead to that pain in particular, if that makes sense.
Makes complete sense. The what is thought of as a problem is actually the unconscious solution until it becomes problematic.
Correct.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Really, it's so refreshing and heartwarming to hear people in your position having that whole mindset and philosophy. Because I gotta say, for many decades now, Mauro, I have been bumping heads within the medical profession with doctors that are still in a compartmentalized approach and symptom-based treatment scheme, and I realize it's particularly it's not exclusively their fault because of the training and education that will occur in medical school in the States. Historically, they don't get much time in learning closed chain biomechanics and how everything is integrated with one another. Had they had that background, well, maybe their viewpoint would be more similar to yours. So I guess my question here is, where did you learn that the symptom is not the problem and that it may be the smoke to the gun, and you have to ask the question why and then hunt down the clues to find out where isn't it moving properly, which is encouraging this area to move to a greater degree and improperly, I'll say. Where did you get that in your medical background? Did you get it in the strength conditioning? Did you get it from Eric? Where did that come from?
Um, Man, if I could tell you, if I could pinpoint it, I would. Um, I think it's been a combination of factors. I, I like to say that I was a CrossFit athlete back in the day. I like to say so.
Okay. Did you compete?
And I did. I was
All right.
actually uh I had a number one placement in one of those national tournaments. So I would really
Fantastic.
dip into it. A lot of weightlifting, a lot of gymnastics, a lot of running. That's when a lot of the stuff that took from medical, I started applying it to myself. Um, when I got when I got the internship with Eric, it was an opportunity to really expand the horizons in terms of how the body works in conjunction with other parts. That's not something that necessarily we were doing back home. Um, but I think like having that exposure definitely helped understanding the body as a whole. So uh, I listened to the podcast a couple months ago when it came out on Eric was talking about Bill Hartman and the model that he used that goes beyond the stuff that we're used to see, the simple biomechanical approach, and think of the body more like in shapes and how the breathing pattern influence range of motion or orientation. And that to me was really eye-opening because that's a rabbit hole on its own. with the whole PRI and stuff in it.
Oh yeah.
It's a rabbit hole. So I feel like going down that, obviously reading a lot of Tom Myers with the fascia really allowed me to understand a little bit even better, and just coaching a lot. think I think nothing can substitute experience, just being on the floor and talking with people, talking with athletes, talking with clients, all variety of clients. I've coached kids, I've coached elderly, 60, 70-year olds, pregnant women, athletes, your regular, Joe. So I think like having those conversations and those hours and those years of experience in the coaching floor, at one point you realize like, well, I don't think knee pain is all about knee pain. It's a matter of time to realize um, and understand that it's a little bit more complex than that. And I can't blame the medical. Well, I guess I can, but I feel like it's easy for me to understand where this uh, religion comes from in terms of, because we learn the anatomy on a dead cadaver, right? That's how we all learn it. So it's a very passive anatomy, like, well, this is the elbow and this is the shoulder. But when you like, how does elbow flexion works? How about how does elbow flexion works when you're in thoracic rotation? Like, it's a different thing. That's not how we were taught. So obviously, when you take the kinetic chain and the biomechanical approach lens to it, it's a completely different conversation. And that's when you go from medical expertise to strength and conditioning. So it's a continuum that it really never goes away.
No, that's great. And I'm not blaming the medical profession either. I think it's brilliant. It's just like you say, it's how people learn, and the the thought process that has been shared. And yeah, when it comes to learning anatomy, you're learning primarily concentric muscular action, because you're taking electrodes to a cadaver on a bed, and you're seeing how those muscles behave when they're electrified. And of course, they're going to shorten in that state, but put the body on 2 feet and have it actually be animated. You'll find that, I'm just thinking the quadratus lumborum is an arm decelerator. You just start to look at muscles in a completely different light.
Hmm.
Uh, and so when it comes to joint symptoms, just in general, aside from looking at the joint, I imagine right away, I generally go above and below. So if it is a knee
Right.
issue, I'm looking at the bottom of the knee, which we'll call an ankle, or the top knee, which we'll call a hip, because it's all connected. And it just so happens that the hip and the ankle are more responsible for greater degrees of movement in regards to three-dimensionality, ball and socket, if you will, where the knee is primarily a hinge. But if I start to get rusty in my ball and socket, that knee is going to start to behave more like a ball and socket, and less exclusively like a hinge, and until bad things start to feel. So yeah, but we could just banter back and forth with that for quite a while. I want to get on to some other things with the time that we have left. Um, but along the same line, like from your perspective, how can the fields of sports medicine and strength and conditioning kind of better collaborate across the industry, and maybe not just in professional sports, but at the college and at the youth athletic level?
Um, I feel like being clear on what the overarching vision of that organization is. I think that's huge, because it all starts with, where is the front office trying to take this team, or this college program. I think understanding that vision and having the buy-in from the whole staff, it's number one asset that you can have when you're working in the trenches. Because if our leadership is not strong and sound, and we're not having a single voice, single input, then that's when things start to get tricky and things start to get messy, and it becomes a horse race, right? I am
Yeah,
right
you
and you're
kind of
wrong.
Sorry, but you
No,
kind of alluded to this earlier in our conversation, and I feel like what is coming about right now are two primary objectives that are often in conflict with one another. One is the athlete's safety and
right,
health, and the W, the win. Where do you end up at the end of the season? So if you have more in it's all about the win, then you're going to be sacrificing player safety and health. But if your player safety health is here, then you may be losing out on some wins, which will, from a profitability standpoint, be really potentially detrimental for the organization. So is that where you're getting?
correct,
Like that's what I'm hearing you're saying.
correct. Because personally, that's nothing to do with what I'm currently working at, but that's where everything starts. Like having the experience of being an owner and being at the top of a business, it really helped me understand that the the clearer the vision is at the leadership level, the easier everything else becomes. So if you're coming to me as an employee and you're telling me this is what we're trying to achieve in the next 5, 10 years, and this is how we think we can make it happen. These are the things that we value, these are the things that we don't. If you come to me with that info, my job instantly becomes easier because I know now what matters and what don't. So that's to me where it starts. So we're always fighting in this continuum where, yes, you want to win versus, the overarching and imperative care for the long health of the athlete, right? It's always those two columns as you mentioned. How do we balance that? That's going to depend on intrinsic values and ethic profile of each organization. If you're telling me that we're going to care more for the long-term development of the athlete, I'm going to take one approach. If you're telling me that what we value more is winning now because our championship window is this, then I'm going to value this. So obviously, the higher you go up in the levels, the higher the stakes. So in that regard, the decisions are usually non-binary. It's usually, it's not about a full go or no go. Like um, there has to be a clear communication with the athlete and the front office staff and the medical team where we're addressing the whole situation as a whole. Like, hey, you can play these games, you can play this season, but understand that this is probably going to turn out to be a surgery if we continue to play. So if you're okay with that, then this is how we're going to do it. Now, if the organization values something else, then we're not even going to mention that. We're just going to go straight to rehab. We're going to shut you down because we believe that you can be an asset for the next 5 years. So I think like having that understanding as an organization is key. It's where everything starts.
That's great. I love your malleability and well, just all your all the answers to my questions in this whole session have been phenomenal. Are you in the place you want to be right now, or this will be my final question? Do you want to go up and work outside of the minors to the majors? Do you find that you serve the greatest good and purpose exactly where you are? I don't want to give you a where do you see yourself in 5 year question, but like what's your path right now?
I think I'm focusing on being where my feet are um, for the time being. If I look back, I have accomplished in the last 2 years more than I ever imagined. I think I'm very grateful and uh, cognizant of that, and I'm very aware of the blessings that I've had in the last 2 years. To say that I want to be here and there in the next 5 to 3 years would be an understatement because life has surprised me so much in the last 2 years. So I don't want to cut myself short. But I'm really working on just being where my feet are currently. I think like there are a couple of things that personally I want to get better at, especially being a second language. I feel like I'm 2, 3 seconds behind my thoughts. Obviously not the same in Spanish. I feel like I want to get more fluent, trying to get more. This is actually my first podcast that I have in English. So, I'm sorry for the listener if I, mispronounce or mis conjugate a verb or something like that. Like
Dude,
it's
you're awesome. Are you kidding me? You
never ending
crushed it.
process. Um, but yeah, like I want to get settled in the strength and conditioning world here. I want to expand my network, uh, see if I can maybe, life will present me with a mentor that I can have along my way of development here. If you know anyone that has a somewhat unique background like me, went from medical to strength and conditioning, I would, deeply appreciate I can get in contact with the person to maybe share our experiences, see where that leads. But for now, I'm just extremely grateful for the opportunity to be where I'm at. The Rangers have placed a lot of trust in me. They have opened a lot of doors for me. And again, I don't want to cut myself short saying I want to be here and there in the next couple of years.
I love it. I love it. So, do you have an Instagram handle? I know people can find you on LinkedIn, and I'll put your connections in the description below the podcast. But can we
Yeah,
follow you somewhere?
yeah. My Instagram handle, I think it's Mauro Castillo MD. Um, I think it's the same thing with my LinkedIn, Mauro Castillo MD. Do have a Twitter. It's uh, Mauro Castillo G. Um, I go through phases. Sometimes I feel like I want to share something. Most of the times I feel like I don't. It's very hard during the season. I do have a webpage, it's maurocastillo.md.com. Sometimes I post, upload stuff in there. Um, but that's about it.
Beautiful. Man, I can't tell you what a thrill this has been chatting with you in this hour here. Thank you again. Congratulations on where you are in your personal and professional life, man. You're shining bright. Thank you for being on.
Appreciate you, Ruggy. We'll keep in touch.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Zelos podcast. Thank you, Mauro, for coming on, as well as the Texas Rangers organization for allowing this to take place. Remember, you can go to my website, rockysnyder.com, for finding information on online as well as in-person courses that are continuing education. There's a couple of free items there you might want to check out. And remember, this July in Long Beach, California, in August in Providence, Rhode Island, the Perform Better 3-Day Functional Summit is occurring. If you haven't registered, do yourself a favor because you won't regret it. Also, NSCA 2025 National Conference coming July 16th and 19th in Kansas City, Missouri. Don't want to pass that up either. Remember, when you need education in the form of a Master's of Science, go to setantacollege.com, enter that code RS10 for 10% off tuition today. And while you're at it, why don't you just grab a copy of my book, Return to Center, Strength Training to Realign the Body, Recover from Pain, and Achieve Optimal Performance. We'll see you next week.